Hey, what's up? Check this out. I'm growing my hair out like Sebastian Bach, or maybe like Kip Winger, or maybe like Vince Neil. Right now, I'm more like Billy Idol, though. What do you think? It's cool? Whatever, dude. You don't know. Chicks dig it. Except my wife. She doesn't dig it. What else is going on besides my new golden locks? Oh yeah, we have a great new episode today with Levi Hilton. I was not familiar with Levi. I didn't know him. I was introduced to him by Patrick Paul O'Neill, who's been on the show multiple times. He's also done a lot to help out with the Inside Fireside Tattoo Club. And he reached out and said, hey, you should find Levi Hilton and get him on a podcast. And so I did that, and I'm really glad that I did because it was one of the great episodes that we've done in quite a while. I didn't know him at all, like I said, but we really hit it off. He's a great, great tattooer, and we went down the rabbit hole on influences, on style, on, kind of staying fresh in tattooing, all kinds of different directions. And if you haven't seen his work, I'll make sure to link to it. It's really, really great. But Levi is also going to do a technique talk for the Inside Fireside Tattoo Club just next week. I forget what date it is, but I'll leave a link to that too. So if you're an Inside Fireside member, make sure to jump in on that call so you can meet Levi and pick his brain about his tattoo process and all that. If you're not a member, then, join. You should do that anyways. And when you join, even if it's after the talk has happened, we record all of them so you can go back and watch it. That's not quite the same as being in the talk, but you could be in future talks. So, it's better than nothing. Hey, let's get to the episode. I hope you enjoy it. Well, tell me a little bit just more about your background, and then how you you can go in whatever order, but how you ended up in San Diego. If you just visited a lot beforehand, or were you tattooing for quite a while in Louisiana?
I started tattooing in Louisiana right around, I think I turned 21 as a tattooer, so I started my apprenticeship at 20, and I just had the opportunity. Someone invited me out to San Diego to guest spot, and I wanted to get tattooed by a few artists that were out here, primarily Adam Hathorn, Honky Kong.
Oh, yeah.
And his work just always spoke to me, and so I came out here. I think that was 2011 for the first time, and I went in to get tattooed by him at Guru Tattoo, not knowing anything about the shop or anything like that.
Was he a permanent artist there, or was just doing a guest spot there?
He was a permanent artist there.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, whenever I walked in, I was going through everyone's portfolios, and I was like, holy shit, this dude works here, and this dude works here. And then I went upstairs for my appointment, and then Cooper was up there. I didn't know that Cooper worked there, and Cooper was one of my favorite artists. His illustrations are just amazing, and seeing what he was working on that day really changed my life. It was like this black and gray World War II sleeve, but Cooper stuff's very illustrative. I know you've interviewed Cooper before, but it was like that line between realistic but illustrative still, and I'd never seen anything tattooed that way, and it blew me away. So ever since then, I was like, I have to figure out how to make it out here. That was my career goal, was getting to San Diego as the end game,
Yeah, I love it out there so much. I came and spent a week or so at Guru tattooing and just interviewing. I interviewed a lot of people. That's when I first met Cooper, and I've had him on several times since. And but at the time, I know they've had a lot of turnover now, but at the time they had Yushi was there. Kevin, what's his name?
Kevin Dickinson. He was just here guest spotting at the shop. Yeah.
Was he?
So that was right after. I was only there when I finally moved to San Diego the first time was 2014, 2015. I was only there for a year, and then I started dating the girl that's my wife now. So I ended up moving back to Louisiana for her. But Guru does have high turnover. A lot of those people were there. Yushi has his own shop out here now. Again, Kevin's back in Florida. He's just out here. Everybody's kind of dispersed, Some of them are still out here, just different shops. But at the time, Guru was man, everyone there was heavy hitter.
Yeah.
So it was sick.
Yeah, absolutely. I met and interviewed Phibbs there as well. He was just doing a guest spot at the time.
He works
there a lot now.
Yeah, he works with us here at the shop as well. So
does he? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great.
Well,
You're there now. You're at Guru now. Like that's your
Oh
tattoo
no, no,
at
no.
Guru.
This
Oh,
is
okay, gotcha.
this is a shop called Amaki.
Amaki. Okay, gotcha.
Emaki. Yeah, my buddy owns it. He used to be the general manager for Guru. From I think 2018 on to whenever we opened this place, and
Okay. What's his name?
his name's Chris Karam,
Okay.
and he's sick. He isn't a tattooer, but I would go to bat for him any day. I know a lot of people can have weird feelings about that, but he's been in the industry since he was very young. I've owned a shop before, and I've always been much more of like a tattoo minded person. It's very hard to own a shop, I think, and try to tattoo still. So ever since I owned a shop, I was always like, it has to be someone else if you want a shop that's run really nice. And this shop, I have to just blow him up while I have the platform too, because yeah, Phibbs works here. There's a great artist come through here. Patrick's guest spotted here, as we just said. Cooper comes here. It's because of Chris. Chris runs this place very well. He's very accommodating to clients and to artists. He very fair deals for everyone that are coming through. So if you're interested in coming to San Diego, come talk to us.
Gotcha.
We have permanent guest spot booth. So we love having that. We've been really fortunate in that way. Phibbs brings a lot of people here, but we house a lot of just guest artists all the time, and it's been the best experience. It's just having a shop that has a guest spot culture that way.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic.
It is. You always kind of like tell yourself you want to have a lot of guests, or I did when I opened a shop, but making it happen is just hard. But now that we are kind of in this position that Chris runs this shop, there's always someone coming in, and it is always like inspiring. Again, Patrick was here for 10 days. It was a dream. He just left the shop so inspired by the time his 10 days were up.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's cool. It's cool.
That's awesome. I think it's important having someone who that's kind of their skill set, their focus as the shop owner. To your point, when you're a tattooer and a shop owner, you're focused on tattooing, and you can you hit this kind of ceiling of complexity trying to do all these different things. Or if you're trying to be a great tattooer, you're trying to keep other artists in the shop booked, you're trying to bring in guest artists, you're trying to it's just too much. It's so important, I think, to have people to identify someone's skill sets and put them in the position to do that thing.
Yeah. I've said for a long time, it's Chris's superpower, because again, he managed 2 locations of Guru. That's like 20 artists. He had a personal relationship with everybody. Me personally, I think I can get along with most people, but when you're in a position of being in charge, that's when getting along with people can be difficult. People have certain expectations, and you have your own little threshold for how much annoyance you can handle, because you're just trying to tattoo as well. But Chris has always been great about juggling everyone's personalities. He's an amazing person. He's one of the best people I think I've ever met in my life. So I really will go to bat hard for that dude. If anyone deserves to be here owning a nice tattoo shop, it is that dude. He respects us and our clients so much. So
nice. Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. We'll talk about that. Let's talk a little bit just about your background, your drawing background. I mean, you do a lot of. I've been flipping through your work since Patrick introduced me to you, and so I've got a good feel for what it is you're doing. It's absolutely beautiful. I love the way that you're kind of in an anime style. I love the way that you're rendering and getting a lot of really interesting, believable effects in it. A lot of backlighting and underglows, and just have a real unique approach to the style. I think. What was your drawing background? How did you end up in working in the way you do?
It's weird, because I am one of those people that I think that I always, for a long time, even as a kid, knew that I wanted to be tattooed and knew that I was very interested in tattooing. But coming into it, I think I was definitely had a concept of what I wanted my work to look like from a tattoo point of view. And a few years into it, I realized I was very into animation growing up, and I realized after seeing work of Tony Ciavaro, I saw one of his tattoos at a convention one day, and I was like, holy shit, you can do this kind of stuff in tattooing. So that kind of pushed me onto that path, I really started kind of biting Tony and Jimmy Litwalk really hard early on. Um, and then really started just like leaning into the things I was into as a kid, which is really Bruce Timm from Batman the Animated Series is probably like the biggest influence I think I have. Um, and then yeah, just tons of cartoon stuff like that. And then Dragon Ball Z became real popular right when I was like in junior high. So the anime stuff always became like a big influence on me as well. But I think animation really it's for different reasons, but the fundamentals between animation and tattooing I think marry very well together. You only get like two or three values to play with, and you really have to. You can add in more, but those have to be so fundamental. Like that, the more that you build upon it, you can't ever get so complex that you forget those three. Like you get like maybe a dark line, your shadow color, and your light color, and maybe a highlight. So that's been my approach, and that's probably the more that I realized those things. I started going down the path of like looking at the cartoons I liked as a child. The more it just like pushed itself in the direction that I'm going now. So I really like illustrators from all different kinds of backgrounds. I'm looking at my book collection right now. If I keep looking off screen, trying to think of like the things that pushed me in that direction and meant a lot to me. I don't know how much of a video game person you were, but I also think of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask.
Okay.
The artist that did the artwork for those, like the strategy guides, he would be an amazing tattooer. I think he luckily just stumbled upon this art style that would make the most amazing tattoos, and he doesn't even know that he would be like one of the greatest tattooers if he just the way that he naturally draws is so heavy blacks and just like beautiful simple color work on top of it, kind of like comic book illustrations.
Yeah. Do you know that person's name? I can't picture the.
I can.
Yeah. I'll look it up at some point.
I'm from the South, so my ability to hold on to Japanese names is not good. They all just are too much.
I think it's interesting that you've identified something like a principle based thing. Like, well, you really only get like three values or so. And so, what have you found if you push it too far? You just lose the effect, the simplicity and the graphic nature of the design, or do you feel like it just falls apart? Does it become something else, or does it fall apart? Or,
I think that I don't think it's like a necessary thing in the sense of like having my style or anything. I think it's just a fundamental to art. I would say that like all the beautiful oil paintings you have behind you, like when you're trying to break these things down, I think that you're breaking them down into shapes of light and shadow, right? So those are always your main two thoughts, and when people tell you to simplify, that's what you're trying to simplify. And I struggle too. I think we all do. Like when we're rendering things, putting a tone that's a value that's too dark in your lights or a value that's too light in your darks, especially if you're trying to do like some subtle like bounce light or underglow, you want to make it beautiful, and it's like if it's too light, it breaks the effect of how round it can look. So I think when animation, it's like to me, I always compare it to sushi, because it's like you're really trying to take these ingredients and amplify them as much as possible, but with like minimal effort. You're really just trying to show with the bare minimum how profound it can be. I think of always the beginning as Spirited Away. I'm really big into Miyazaki. He is just like one of the masters of this, but he paints the main character's holding like a bouquet of flowers, and they're wrapped in cellophane, and in drawing that, it's just a black outline for the cellophane wrap around the flowers and just a white highlight, and you understand that it's wrapped in cellophane. To whereas I probably would have tried to do like some weird like I I can't remember what it's called, but where the effect of like light hitting at an angle on like plastic or lacquered things kind of gives like a faded look, kind of like a dispersed highlight.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do in animation. So he just white highlights it, and it's knowing that that's the least effort for the most effect.
Yeah.
I think that applies really well to tattooing. Like if you can make it where it's just the least amount of effort, the most bulletproof that it can be, it's going to hold up the best and look the best, you know? Yeah. It's when you try to over-render things and make them too soft or delicate, like that's when the trouble starts for us. You know, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I feel like I ramble a lot.
I think that was all really well said. Yeah, it's like I try to think about just like, well, how little can I, how much can I take away and still get the point across? Like, how little can I do to get the point across? And it's a hard thing because it's almost like you want to prove to yourself that you can push things further and make them more believable. But yeah, what do you end up losing in that? It's a fun problem.
It is a weird thing because now that I feel like I've learned as much as I have from all the videos I've watched and things like that, I try to just remember now back in the mindset of when I knew nothing, how I would just sit at a sketchbook and my only real thought would be like, I got to draw something sick. And I didn't know how to, but that was like, I don't know, I just had this intuitive thought that of like, I knew if it looked good or not for what my mind knew. And I seemed to be doing good early on in my career for certain things like that. People would get tattooed. But now it's like I have so much knowledge that sometimes it feels like it gets in my way because I'm thinking too much about every little thing, you know?
Right.
And I think that's funny how that works, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I find myself a lot, we have a tattoo club, the Inside Fireside Club, and we do drawing challenges, and I find myself doing critique nights all the time and all that. And you'll get in your own head where if you feel like especially if you feel like you know something and you're teaching it to other people, you get in your own head when you're doing, because you don't want to make the mistakes that you've told other people not to make, so you just start overthinking everything that you're doing, so for me personally, my own versions of our drawing challenges are so difficult, much harder than tattoos that I draw, just because I have all of these like kind of ideas that I'm sending out into the club all the time, and then I don't want to put something out there where I'm not following my own kind of rules, so I'm like overthinking what my rules are, So but
funny. There's like, I think there's like 15 though. Like I think that like if you really like, I could probably create a list of the rules, but each one's like a fundamental, right? So it's like that's a lot to try to juggle in your mind when you're drawing something. And the thing is, like people say there are no rules in art, but there are plenty of rules in art. I think that you can just like maybe when they talk about breaking a rule, it's like you can break one if 14 others are in place and sound. Then you have the opportunity to break this one. But it's like mixing music. It's like when you move one shifter, all the others move as well to balance and accommodate. So I think that you're always making mistakes. I think that and that's the truth of it, because I feel very much the same way. I've had an apprentice before. She's crushing it. I think I did a good job teaching her. But when you're pointing out mistakes, like you're saying, in their work, things to look out for, you make the same ones all the time. But I think that's what you have to explain to people is like, there is no mistake. There is no perfection. Like these mistakes are all very easy to make. Like they're just part of the fucking process. It's better to just get them out of the way and then know to correct them as you go. Art sucks, dude. It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah, I think that's important to remind yourself of. Is like you have like it's all a series of mistakes and corrections, right? So until you make a mark, you don't know how to correct them. Like it has to be there in order for you to know what's right and wrong about it. So you can't just sit and think about it. You just have to do it and then recognize the issue and make the correction. So you're just always. It's like, once you pile a bunch of paint on a canvas for a portrait or for an illustration or for anything, I mean, you don't know that the highlight's too warm in the forehead until you deal with some stuff in the nose or in the cheeks or whatever. Like everything is right or wrong compared to something else around it. So
Exactly. Yeah. Like perspective looks great when you make your first line.
right.
You're killing it, but it's the context, like what you're saying, like everything is dependent upon that context, and you just have to be willing to make those mistakes. I'm playing a lot of Elden Ring right now, and I feel like there's some kind of like comparison I could make to just like you get told that you're making a mistake, and you realize it maybe the first time you do it, but it's not until like the 13th time that you've made the same mistake that you're really just fucking pissed that's when you don't make that mistake anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, when you get told that you're making a mistake, expecting yourself to fix it right then and there is a little silly. Like, you kind of have to keep making that mistake to now you're aware of it, but just because you have figured that out doesn't mean you're not going to continue to make that mistake.
Yeah.
You just have to finish your drawing, look at it, think of each mistake that you could have possibly made, and see if they're there, and then try to fix them. I don't know if you have this thing, but I've been really coming to terms with how much work it takes. I used to think that, like, in this way, that the more work you put in and the better you got, the better you would be at knocking something out first try. To whereas now in my career, I've had to accept that, like, no, how to be better is to draw it. Like, your first try was you figuring out how you want it, and now it's better to draw it again, and you can lean into what you want. Like, if I figure out the pose the first time, chances are that it's probably stiffer than I would make it if I knew what I was setting out for the first time, So I usually draw things like 3 or 4 times now to try to get it as sound bulletproof as possible. And that can seem like that goes against what I thought of art as a kid, where it's just like, oh, if you're really good, you can just knock it out real quick first try. And it's like, oh, I think actually the people that are really good spend days doing preliminary like versions of this thing to make sure they get the right one.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can relate to that or.
Yeah. I think of it. I think it's like it's easy to like fall in love with a happy accident, or like you said, you think you nailed a pose on the first try, and so then you're like, okay, that part worked, so now I'm going to start building off of that. I don't want to change anything because that part seems like it's going in the right direction. But most likely, like you said, it's stiffer than it could be, or it's not quite as dynamic as it could be. But because you feel like you kind of lucked into it the first time, or because you feel like you nailed that part, it's like, well, that's a problem I don't have to solve anymore. But the fact is, with not a lot more effort, you could probably solve it a lot better. Yeah. It's that I used to have an art teacher that said, kill your darlings. And in fact, he was for me terrible, but great about recognizing when I had in oil painting. He was an oil painting teacher. Recognizing whenever I was painting to something, like I had like solved the eye early on, or I thought I had, like I think I've got that part, and I'm painting everything else to it. He was good about recognizing that and coming in like wiping out the part that I thought I nailed, like taking a rag and just wiping it out over my shoulder. I'd be like, oh, wow, I was finished with that part. And he's like, yeah, well, do it again. And it was just because, he noticed that I thought I had nailed that first right off the bat, and I was painting to it. I was making everything else match it, but it really wasn't as good as it could be. I just got kind of lucky with it, So.
And I think, too, it's that context thing where it's like, even if you've nailed this part of the face and you're trying to paint everything to that, there is a difference, I find, of like nailing the eye versus nailing the face. And it doesn't matter if you've nailed the eye if you didn't nail the face. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's better to just that is one thing I'm grateful for the iPad for, because it's just so quickly I'll just delete a layer and then be done with it. And it's like it's deleted, it's gone. I can just do it. But I won't. You feel much worse ripping a page out of your sketchbook and balling it up and throwing it away because it's tactile. It's there in front of you. But I can just real quickly just delete a layer and kind of just be like, it's done. It's fine. And then start and make myself start over. There's a tattoo artist that he changed my life just seeing his sketchbook. Curtis Burgess, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with him, but he just does like little thumbnails, and they're the most like his sketches seem so to me like I'm sure it's different for him. He would probably hate me gushing on him so much, but like they seem so organized and well thought out, and it would just be like rows of little thumbnails, and sometimes it'd be like the three of them would be very similar. He would just kind of be like tweaking it just a little bit, and then like the fourth one would be like completely fucking different thought process, you know. But in doing those little thumbnails, like he's the one that like just seeing his process really showed me like the point of thumbnails. Where it's just like, well, no wonder his drawings are so sick. But that's what I mean. Like his shape design is so amazing that you don't get shape design right first time. There's no way. Like if that's one of the fundamentals that he really focuses on. And in order to focus that, you have to see options. You have to see rhythms. You have to see variety and choice, you know? So there is no first shot in some of those things, I think, you know?
Yeah, I agree, and you can reckon folks like Curtis. I don't know how you actually say his name, but over at Guru now, Kenny Poke, you know him, Kenny. He's I forget where he's from, but like a lot of the shapes that he uses, you can tell he's discovered something and he refined it, and it's like it's such. Like the way he gets from A to B. My friend Andy Chambers is great about this, and that he just wants the shape to. Like he wants it to be like as unique and dynamic as it can be. So like a finger wave for Andy, he just doesn't want it to look like a finger wave he's drawn before. He like wants it to be like the evolution of that thing that he's already done well. And to your point, it's like you can't just. There's no first try on that. You know, like Andy's doing my entire back, like neck to ankle, my whole back. And the amount of time that I'll just have to stand there while he redraws some little hook of a wave that goes over my bend of my armpit back here, you know, like he just draws it and draws it and draws it and wipes it and looks at it. And it's just I think you just have to get obsessed with that stuff, I guess.
I think so, and over time, I'm sure that Andy probably has had the thing of just being like, "Oh, I was right the first time." Like intuition will get you a lot of things. But it takes experience to build intuition, I think. And if you really want to get the experience, that's doing lots of just subtle changes on shapes or big changes on shapes. That way you can eliminate all the wrong ones. You don't know. You can be confident, but it's folly to be confident if you haven't really tried everything else. You know, you got to be honest with yourself about this kind of thing. It's like, does this feel good? And if it does feel good, is it just good enough? Like, what if it were better? Are you going to commit to it being good enough? Sometimes you have to. Sometimes the client's there and you have to. But, like, if you can take the time, see what else is out there.
Yeah.
Just, you're never going to improve if you're not willing to think that maybe you don't not know everything, if that makes sense. Like, you have to accept that about yourself. You know, we're all on the path. We're all learning, you know, so you're never done learning. So
and I think being curious all the way through the process. So the design process is a big part of it, but a lot of times I find that the kind of great ahas or successes that I'll have, things that work really well for me. Maybe it was good enough on the drawing. It was good enough I laid the stencil out. And then during that physical tattoo process, and maybe this is something over time as you become more comfortable in your tattoo skill set, that you go like, really, now that I see it crossing that part of the arm, I really want it to do this. And making that call on the fly, and then that will dictate another change or inspire another change. And then that thing really, I think if you're staying aware and curious, then that can evolve all the way up to the time that the needle drags across the skin, I'm questioning the stencil or the marker or whatever, just going is that the best? Like, now that I see it on the way that it folds on the terrain of the body, is that right? So.
Yeah. And all these things take time, I think all the time about I knew in my first year or two of tattooing that things needed to fit the body, but my understanding of what that meant was very infantile, and I find still to this day, like what you're saying, you kind of learn sometimes because of your experiences, you'll be like, this actually would look better if it did this instead, because you learned at some point that was like an option. Because maybe you got lucky on one, or maybe one was so bad that you realized it should have been something else. But it is just again, you can only know by just deepening your understanding of things and how things work on the body is a I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever would say that they think that they've nailed figuring that shit out, because that is it's different person by person. That's the whole fucking point of it. Every body is different. So how can you ever know for sure that you've made the best decision?
Yeah.
And that gets so overwhelming when you sit and think about things like that. But it's part of the process.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's like you said, maybe you stumbled onto it. Maybe you got lucky once before and you recognize like, oh, I really or like, sometimes at the end of a tattoo, you've done everything and you go, you're, 30 hours into a sleeve and you go, that what I hate the most is right on the front of the deltoid, the way that it ends bugs me to death. And I just didn't think about that enough. And so then that's in your head. The next time you're laying something over a deltoid, you're like, I don't want to end up doing that thing I did last time where it like sits too far back, or that like I didn't use that space very well, or vice versa. Or maybe, I love the way that thing happened to canopy that way. I love that shape as to finish a sleeve, whatever. But yeah, it's just staying curious and staying aware of what's working and what's not working, I guess.
I think to your point, nothing teaches you faster than feeling like you fucked someone's body up. I did on this front piece that I was doing on a girl, just felt like luckily I was able to like address it, but I just felt like it cut her torso in such a way that it was just like the most unflattering thing ever. And nothing will make you more aware of like the importance of things like that than making that kind of mistake. But now that's like, I think that mistake made it to where that's one of the things I'm most interested in as a tattooer. And I think being that I'm more of like a new school tattoo, I don't get to do as much of it as I wish I could, but I'm very just interested in how you can make people's bodies look shaped a certain way. Like I personally like would love, I've always tried to put feelers out for if I could either tattoo a trans person that is male to female or female to male and try to take their body and use shapes to help them feel a little bit more whichever gender they are trying to affirm, whether they feel like they're too curvy, maybe wish they were a little bit more broad. You can do that with tattoos. That's what I learned from the one mistake, is I feel like I made this one girl just look very boxy and more masculine, and I'm so interested in that kind of concept where it comes with the way you can shape people, the way that you tailor things. But I think that's also why we like tattooing girls more, is because it's harder. They're a lot smoother curves. Dudes are boxy. The point is with dudes, you can just put things kind of wherever and almost like bash it into working. To whereas I think on a female form, you really have to nail that kind of stuff. You really have to have that work so well. And I think new school is kind of notorious for just kind of being like palm-sized little bangers and kind of joke tattoos, almost like, SpongeBob fucking funny tattoos. And I really wish that I could do much more like bigger, serious work that was just like beautiful. I mean, imagine working with fibs every day, and you're just like, dude, I just wish I could do things that hit like that, I still want a focal point in a subject matter. I'm really big into tattooing characters, but I'm just obsessed with that whole aspect of tattooing. And it's so crazy that like making an image as an artist is one thing, but then really that's a whole nother rabbit hole, is trying to decorate a body in a good way.
It's, you mentioned in fibs, I was thinking about him when you were saying that. It's like what's so great is you look at it. I mean, it's beautiful, it's elegant, it's simple, it's graphic, it works in every way. And what I think makes it so great is because you just want to go like, man, why didn't I think of that? Like it feels obvious. Like when you see his work, it does obvious. Yeah, it's like, I should have known to do that.
It does feel so obvious, and almost I think the sense of it. And I hate to say this, almost like I've tried to talk to him about it before, and it always makes me feel like a little bad, like I was saying something that I don't mean to come across mean. But there's not a lot of times there's not a fucking focal point. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like he's not rendering an image most of the times. The body's the focal point,
Right,
and
right.
that's fucking crazy. Because again, like I am very much a character tattooer. I don't like to tattoo. I'll do whatever. But if I had my say about it, I'm not good at tattooing like objects. Like if I'm gonna tattoo an object, it would have some sense of character to it. I would try to make it feel like, some cursed thing from Beauty and the Beast that had a personality.
Mm.
I'm much more of a character based tattooer. But when you see someone's work like Phibbs's, you're just like, especially seeing some of the full bodies that he's completed that I know most people don't get to see that way. It's 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 a whole thing that again I think 10, 15 years ago people didn't even know that they could tap into that in the way that he does. Like again, like maybe Philip Liu had like an understanding, but Philip Liu still would have been thinking of focal points. He
Right.
still would have been thinking imagery. Phibbs is just movement, just flow, just serving the body.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's insane stuff to work with.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and that's a great way to put it too. I hadn't thought of it quite in those terms, but that's an excellent way to put it. I remember a few years ago, I guess this was pre-COVID, talking to. I was at a convention, and my booth mates or my next door neighbors were Jeff Gogwe and Laura Jade, and was talking to Laura about. Just pattern based tattooing, like outside of focal points, outside of believability. And like you, I like to make something, I like to create atmosphere. I do want to create movement. I do want large shapes that look like they make sense abstractly, but I still want it to be like a thing that you recognize that looks like it could live in the place that I've put it. And then their conversation about just like forgetting about atmosphere, forgetting about depth of field, forgetting about like, and just thinking about interesting arrangements of patterns, on a body. And then of course Jeff, has done a lot of, believe like, whether it's Japanese or whether it's
Yeah,
realism or anything else. So he's done a lot of like believable subjects. But then Laura was bringing this real kind of almost ornamental pattern stuff in, and they're collaborating more and more. And I feel like she really had a lot of influence on him simplifying some things as well. And I think at that point in time they were just exploring those ideas back when I was talking to him about it. And it's something I've always wanted to do a podcast on or tackle. Is
hmm
that type of like exactly what you're talking about with Phibbs. Like.
I think that the important thing is to recognize like that every piece, no matter if it's a focal point or not, they're they all have they're all abstract art. Like you have to be able to break down like if I'm really trying to figure out if a color palette's working or not, like it's like take the structure out, take the values and the lines out. What do these shapes look like? What do these colors look like? Like everything is abstract, and then it's just how detailed you make it from there. So yeah, but I think Curtis Burgess again, like he is one of my favorite tattooers, and I think it shows just when you talk to me about because I compare everything to him. It's he'll have focal points, but he did this Reaper once where the hood is negative space, um, and it looks like the skull is sinking back into nothingness, so it has depth of field, but it's also very ornamental in a sense. All his tattoos are very ornamental, but that's the bitch of I think art is like I love James Tex and Steve Moore's ability to have this insane perspective on it. I love certain tattooers that have good depth of field in a way that some people try to do like anime kind of like depth of field or painting depth of field where they're blurring out a part of the subject, maybe the hands real close so they'll blur it out and then the face is behind it. I hate that kind of stuff because I only think of longevity, and I just think that that's just not good tattooing, but some people are good at it in ways that I think will hold up. um,
Yeah.
but to have those things to appreciate that in tattooing, but then also appreciate again Curtis's ornamental designs or Phibbs's ornamental designs, and then trying to pick where you can apply
Mm-hmm.
all these things and have a successful image that can have flat elements with rendered elements with ornamental elements is people people would say that you're doing something wrong. People would be like, if this is so rendered, you can't have that be that flat. Like it would. It's a really hard thing to balance and achieve. And that's, I think, just is the biggest bitch of art, is being able to appreciate these things so much, but then having to recognize, like, if they're not accessible to you and what you're doing, or what little, you might not be able to take as much of it as you want. Yeah. You might only be able to take, like, just a smidgen, It's a recipe, too much salt is going to throw off the whole thing, so sometimes you can only take a little bit,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can relate to that at all, but it's just, I struggle every day thinking of James Tex, Curtis Burgess, and Phibbs. Like, right. It's like, what do you do,
Yeah, it's a good point. I completely agree, and I've been tattooing a long time, but I still find myself, when I see something really, really mind blowing, like those guys you're talking about, and Steve Moore is for sure one of my favorite tattooers, and then I'll see some huge chunk of negative space that he's willing to leave, like an entire butt cheek blank, and or like this whole sweeping thing that's like it's important for the design, but I was actually talking to Andy about this last time, a week or two ago. He was working on my back, and it's like, even if you're bold enough to leave, say, for example, big chunks of open space, and you can step back from the tattoo and recognize that it's important, like, your client, you still have to deal with the client. They're just like, what are you going to do there? Like, are you just going to, like, what's going to go in this area? Or like, oh, nothing. You just have to trust me that area has to stay blank. You can't do it.
Or it has to stay just a flat tone of cool gray.
Right.
Just one flat tone that... Yeah. Yeah, I know that is a foot cubed of your body, but just trust me. Just trust me,
Right.
It's really hard. I think Patrick's really good at that kind of stuff. Like, I really appreciate him of being able to, I think that's the thing, if I could say about Steve's tattoos, if I were trying to approach him, it would be like trying to find some way to add some sort of abstract, ornate detail where you're not breaking it, because you're trying to keep your values all together, so it still feels like it's simple, but at least there's something there if you are going to catch it to appreciate in it, whether it's like someone's abdomen and you're just putting like good wrinkles in, and again, the values are really close together, so you don't stare at it, but if you are staring at it, Patrick's really good about doing like just black with like a dark gray wash over it, where the whole thing is so dark that your mind just accepts it as like, I'm not even meant to look there. But if you do look there, there's this subtle black work ornamentation happening in that area, That's the bitch again about tattooing. It's just got different rules than painting. Like, on a canvas, you can just say, it's a lot easier to say nothing's happening here, but on a body, it moves. The body moves. Sometimes the thing that you don't want to be the forefront becomes the forefront. When someone reaches a certain way to get something, if you just have a big strip of nothingness right there, sometimes that can be unappealing. So you have to figure out ways to where it's like, it's necessary that it's not the most appealing, but if that is what you see, how do I try to make it appealing, It's again, dude, art fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, and that's anyway. I do love that about about tattooing, and when we were talking about shape design or just like dark and light shapes, but in tattooing you can embed a lot of detail and shadow shapes for that very reason. It gives you like kind of an excuse to get to do a lot of like subtle things for that maybe, to your point, that's well put, aren't necessarily meant to be seen, but someone at some point is going to see them, and it's like you can leave. I mean, I have plenty of paintings here that just have like the primed gray kind of background, and the paint just kind of falls out. No one thinks twice about that, but to your point, in a tattoo, it's not an option. You just can't do it.
Yeah, because then you're not serving the body well, and that what is tattooing? It's putting our own body, so it's like you have to always be serving the body. Talking about shape design, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, but from listening to some of your other podcasts, I'd heard you say things that really made it. I try to tell everyone about this guy. He's one of my favorite artists, but his name's Ivan Earl. EYVIND. And then
Okay.
I think Earl is Earle. But he worked on it is, yeah, I can see my book. He worked on Sleeping Beauty back in the day. And then throughout his life he did a lot of like um print style stuff that would remind you of kind of like Hokusai kind of style stuff, but different. And when you, I always say I think Sleeping Beauty is one of America's like best animated films. Like if it's one of the only Disney films that I would say like competes with like a Miyazaki. I don't know how long it's been since you watched it or anybody listening to
Yeah,
this, but
very
if
long.
you go back to that one, there's backgrounds painted in that are insane amount of work. No other Disney film looks like that. But then also there's scenes where she's like, if you just YouTube her singing the Once Upon a Dream song in the woods, you can see that all the trees are just rectangles, and then he paints in details to the point that you can't tell how simple the shapes are. A lot of the landscapes are very geometric, simple shapes, and a lot of like if you look up his print work, um, the shapes are so simple, but you can tell shape design is one of his fundamentals. I always think style, like I think style, people get style wrong. They think it's like something that like the way you draw something, and I don't think that that's what style is. I think style is the way that you prioritize the fundamentals of art. Like shape is one of them, line of course is one of them, value is one of them, color, all these different fundamentals, edge work. The hierarchy of shape design or the hierarchy that you arrange these fundamentals in is going to lead to like what really makes your style. Like I know you're familiar with Lion Decker,
Mhm.
right? Like JC Lion Decker,
Yeah.
shape design, right? Like all these little shapes in a face. Ivan Earl is even more boiled down than that shit. It's like the
Hmm.
whole subject is like a tree is all about its silhouette, and that's just part of an image. I really think that if you found his stuff, like you would, I think you would dig it, just from things I've heard you say on different podcasts.
Awesome.
So
Well,
please
thanks.
check it out.
I
Let me know what you
will.
think of it.
I definitely will. Talking about shape and flowing with bodies and stuff like that. Coming back to your work, you had mentioned earlier a lot of the whether it's new school or neo trad or even realism. A lot of the times you're dealing with these like these kind of things that are pork chopped onto the skin that don't necessarily relate either to other tattoos or to the part of the body. And a lot of times I find myself coming in behind people who have not paid a lot of attention to how they put their tattoo on the body, and then I'm forced to reconcile my piece, their piece, and the area of the body that connect the two, and all that stuff. How do you think about that or do you think about it? I assume you do when you're laying your work out.
Yeah, I try to think about it the as much as I can because I think it's very important to recognize the canvas as a whole, right? Like their whole body, whether they plan on getting tattooed or not. There are sometimes you can get a tattoo that I wouldn't necessarily agree with if that's the only tattoo that's ever happening, right? Like, case I don't want to show it right now, but I have the Brave Little Toaster tattooed on my arm, and it has like the extension cord comes off of the Brave Little Toaster and wraps around my arm, um, like twice.
Oh wow!
And it was cool when that was the only tattoo on my arm, because
Right.
like the plug's like right centered on my forearm, so you see the plug in right there. And people be like, "What's that?" And then it'd be like, "Oh, you know." But now that I'm heavily tattooed, it breaks the illusion. Like that's not the only thing you see. It just cluttered and it cuts my arm in weird ways where the cord wraps around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if that was the only tattoo, it'd be fine, right?
Right.
But if someone would have been there at the shop in 2008 to been able to have said, "Hey, probably not the best idea," I probably would have listened, you know. So I try to think about that while I'm tattooing. I think you have to worry about the whole person's body. That is part of our job. So I do care a lot about the way things are fitting and how I think that they'll be connected with. But to say that I think that that's very important, I also have to acknowledge that I think that there's always like two types of people. And sometimes when I'm tattooing next to somebody that I know didn't give two shits about the body, I get to make really interesting decisions that I wouldn't normally have made because I do care.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes I have to just kind of look at it instead of being frustrated as it's like, well, this is my role as someone who does care probably too much about these things and drives myself crazy. This is my opportunity to make something that I wouldn't have normally made that can maybe be cooler than what this other asshole that made these decisions ever. I'm going to elevate them as well. Because
Yeah.
sometimes that happens, you know? Like, you can make decisions that justify their decisions, their wrong decisions, and make those decisions right. I think about this guy that's like a music theory guy, and he talks about, like, there are no, it's kind of like what we were saying earlier, it's all context, right? So there's no wrong notes. It's like that chord may sound like shit, but what if I play this shitty chord and then play this chord that makes it sound like that shitty chord resolved to this chord. Now that first chord doesn't sound like shit so much anymore, does it? Because it bolstered this beautiful thing.
Mm.
Sometimes you get that opportunity, I think. You know,
Yeah.
like you get to make them look like a better tattooer by fixing their bullshit. You know, I try to think that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, I'm always, I operate my designs on my tattooing, everything. I kind of use if then scenarios. So, and if there is if there is a tattoo, no matter how it sits on the skin, it always kind of becomes my starting point. So at the very least, it's kind of an asset to me because it's like, well, I know for sure that I'm starting with this sort of shape and we're moving up in this direction, and so I know whatever it is, that's at least that part's dealt with. I know where we're starting and where we're trying to end up, and I know that, and then you can end up using every element of the existing kind of piece if it's from color and trying to complement that or whatever. So whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's nice to have it's always a starting point. So
Yeah, I agree with that because like if I can, I will be like I think first decision is like, okay, is my tattoo, are there parts of mine that are going to go on top of this tattoo? Excuse me. Like if they have like light leaves in the background or like any sort of depth effect thing, I might be covering that up. Like it might just be best. Sometimes you just have to, I'm always inclined to be like mine's going behind. I think that is typically the best way. And I think if you are at that position when you make a decision to go in front of something else, you know that you're making the right decision because it's your natural inclination to just go behind. But if I am going behind something, then I'm instantly like, cool, can I put like some sort of drop shadow on my piece from this? Is there any way I can make them look like they're interacting? Like you say, everything's just, you got to look at it as an opportunity.
yeah.
But again, certain things with new school, like, again, I think people think a new school is like just like little hand size things. And I try to, like, if you come in and you're like, I want this on my forearm, I'm trying to convince you that wrist to elbow. I have this thought, and it comes from other things I've read about perception, like the science of perception. But I think when we look at a body, there are just certain areas that we're willing to break an image up to, like just instantly mentally without even being aware of it. But like obviously if you see a full sleeve, you'll accept that. Like your mind will see it and it'll start trying to put it together and recognize what it is, which is why you want focal points in different areas so that there's enough information at first glance for someone to fill in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you have a big forearm tattoo and a big upper arm tattoo, your mind will be like two separate tattoos, right? But once you get smaller than that, for the most part, you stop looking at what people have tattooed on them, and then you just accept they're tattooed, and they just have a look of clutter. You don't know what they have tattooed on them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always just trying to I think about that kind of stuff, and I just want to fill the space the best I can, because I think that clients and some tattooers, if you're young, you don't recognize that sometimes when you've seen a good tattoo on Instagram, one of the things that made you really like it was how it filled the space. Some people think that they could do this tattoo this big and it would still be that good of a tattoo. And it's like, actually, like 90% of like why that tattoo looked so impressive was just the vibe of it. That's Phibbs' stuff to a T. Like, it is how it works in that space. And to do something too small in a space or too big in a space, well, there is no too big in a space.
Mm-hmm.
To do something too small in a space just does disservice. You can have things wrapped too much. So I guess you could have like too big, maybe on a width scale, but I really try to think about those things a lot. But again, I feel like when you're doing Japanese and maybe some neo trad, I think customers are a lot more open to that kind of thing.
Hmm.
To whereas like sometimes with cartoony stuff, or again, I think like cartoony stuff can just be like a joke kind of stuff, and people don't want to commit to like just big, beautiful pieces. But I think that all the pieces of mine that do well are the ones that fit the spot the best. You know, like
Yeah.
that is such a part of this that people don't talk about a lot. You know, again, as image based tattooers, we want to do a good job on the image. You know, if you're doing, I love doing girls, so it's like, for so long, it's just like, am I doing a good job rendering the girl's face? And it's like, it's all for nothing if it doesn't, if it's too small, or if it, doesn't look good in the space that it takes up, you're fighting an uphill battle, So
Yeah. Yeah.
I try to think about that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right that you're in the kind of cartoony or new school styles. Think about how many people working in that style are even like exaggerating, giving the illusion of it being a sticker, doing a bold white outline with a
Yeah.
with a drop shadow on it. So it's like it's almost part of it now. It's like you said, like joke tattoos. It's like, oh, how stickery can we even make this thing look? How slapped on can we
Yeah.
make it look? In some ways, it has become a part of the style. Yeah. So trying to fight
I,
against that's probably a challenge.
It is, and I don't. I am always like, I'll tell you my opinion on things, but I am very much like, dude, if that's what you want, do it. And I'm glad that there are people that do it well. I definitely don't mean to shit on anyone's pursuit of happiness, whether the client or the tattooers. But I do think that it can be just again a little short sighted. Like my brave little toaster tattoo. Again, if I would have known better what the end result would look like, probably wouldn't have done it. So sometimes I think like if a client knew that that sticker tattoo then is gonna just like always just be a sticker, and if they ever try to fill out their bodysuit that way, that it's obviously gonna be. It won't be it'll be jarring and it won't be stand out in a good way. You know what I mean? Like if they get a Philip Blue bodysuit and then they have just like a big, sticker tattoo, actual sticker tattoo, it's never gonna look as refined and as reverent as the rest of their
Yeah.
body would. So just think about those. They're fun. They totally have their place. But it's smart. I try to anytime someone comes in and does want a small tattoo or something like that, it's like, look, let's do it. I don't put it in the center of your forearm. Let's put it by your wrist. That way, the rest of your arm, the biggest amount of space that's open, is all connected. You don't want to divide that. You don't want to put this little tattoo on your bicep and then split your arm as above that and then below that. Put it at your wrist. That much of your arm is still cohesively untouched. That's the way to try to handle those kind of tattoos.
Yeah.
But that is thinking about their body. That is trying to do again what our experience says is best for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I ramble.
No, that's
I feel like
great.
I
I
just
think
ramble
I think
about.
that is a thoughtful way to approach it and a good way to explain it. I think most everyone would understand that, even if they say, no, this is my only tattoo, and this is where I wanted it. The explanation of, well, hey, what you're doing is you're kind of destroying this entire area of your body. That like you're really limiting anyone that might come after me if you ever were to change your mind. And so
Yeah, and I never want to talk shit to clients, but I don't unless you are 98 years old, shut up. You don't know that. Like I am trying to think of your body as you getting it fully tattooed, and I'm trying to best accommodate that for you. That's the way that we should all think about this. And if you're 45 and you're telling me that this is the only tattoo you'll ever get, I just want to tell you shut up.
yeah,
That's what's such a weird thing to be um that committal towards anything like that. So yeah, you just try to point them in the right direction as much as possible without being condescending. But here at the shop, I hear so many times people come in and they're like, "I want a 3/4 sleeve," and it's like, the fuck you do, man. Like 95% of people come back and want that last quarter filled in, and it looks like shit every time because what do you add new in that much room? Just get the full sleeve, and I'll design the koi fish to be full bodied to your wrist.
Yeah.
Instead, the koi fish is only going to be to 3/4 down your forearm, and now you're just going to have like, I guess I'll just try to tack on this Japanese water a little bit further.
Right.
Now it doesn't look balanced anymore. Like, I know you're worried about having a sleeve and sticking out your wrist, but it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Just commit to the whole thing. Like, I think people also think that makes them different. Oh, if I get a 3/4 sleeve, that's unique instantly. Well, you're just having this conversation at the shop where people value uniqueness. They think uniqueness is creativity, and that's so ignorant, because if you want something to be unique, just make it ugly, and then it'll be so unique. And think of as a new school tattooer, think of all the people that make ugly tattoos and then say like, well, that's just my style. And they might be booked up for a long time because people think uniqueness on its own holds value, and it's like it doesn't. That's not how it works.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, it's a good point. Do you and I'll wrap it up soon. We're an hour in. I don't want to take too much of your day, but with your kind of subject matter and your style, do you have more people coming in as big fans of a particular anime or whatever, and you're re-rendering or using your own kind of filter to recreate an existing character, or are you inventing characters a lot?
Okay, so yes, I like to, if someone comes to me and they're really into this anime, if I'm not into it, I'll still get on YouTube and watch character compilations and really fill out what that character is. And for the most part, I'm going to filter it through my lens. I hate that tattooing is kind of like gotten to a point, especially in the anime scene, because animation lends itself really good to tattooing. I'm going to try not to ramble too much about this and try to keep all this succinct, but animation renders itself to tattooing very well. But a lot of, I think, young people nowadays, they want things that look just like the animes. And a lot of tattooers can do that, but then if they don't have an understanding of like the medium of tattooing, those tattoos look washed out in a few years. I've seen great tattoos that they're just not built as tattoos. You just built them as you would cell shade the anime, right? I've always been like, I want your tattoo to be, I'm going to use that word again, unique. I want it to look like I've drawn it. And it's going to have my style to it, because I think that you should go to artists that have their own style. You should be picking them for good reasons. But I'm going to try to capture about that character what is the most about that character. Like, whatever the feeling this tattoo has, it is going to speak to them specifically. I'm not going to try to put in dumbest terms, like, I'm not going to try to do a Goku tattoo and make him seem as angry as Vegeta. You know, it's like they're different vibes completely. So I want to just always honor the character, but I do want it to come through in my style. But if I'm drawing for myself, I've really been doing a lot of like self studying recently, since tattooing's been as slow as it has been, and I really like to just draw girls. Typically, I think with like masks. I think I'm really interested in the concept of trauma. Obviously, Hanya Massacre, most people know it's they deal with like heartbreak. It's a woman becoming a demon through jealousy, heartbreak, envy. You know, I kind of will draw girls with Hanya mask, like along stages of becoming Hanyas, or maybe turning back into humans, are using masks to like hide their intentions, or just certain things like that. I feel like that's what I always kind of like when I'm doing like little studies on how good is this person, how evil is this person, how much would their actions be justified. I'm really into the concept of justification, because I think justification is like you're justifying that you did something wrong. There's no way to get around that. No matter how you frame this, you did a bad thing. Like, if murder is justified, you still murdered someone. That's an inherently bad thing. If we can say that the scales are balanced, that's cool. But, like, that still means you did. There's no way to get around that. You know what I mean? I think everything when I'm trying to draw for myself just kind of references those things. Just a lot of females. I think females are way more like vulnerable characters, but I also like, again, every Miyazaki film is a female lead character. So yeah, that's what I'm personally trying to do, and I think say with my work, if people are letting me do my own stuff. A lot of the girls that I get to do are kind of my own little thing, and they all mean different little things to me. And I've never really ever gotten into that until recently. I started trying to talk about it more, and a few people asked me, and they were like, "Dude, you should." Like Patrick was one of the people who was like, "You should be vocal about these kind of things. This is insane. Like your artwork's already good," but he was very. He pumped me up a lot. I usually don't get that kind of stuff. I usually don't like it. I feel like you can tell most of this thing has not been me talking about my tattoos.
Right.
It's been talking about art.
Yeah.
But I think that's just my thing. I think I'm just really obsessed with those concepts of why we do the things we do, what trauma does to us, and then whether or not we were right or wrong in those things. So, But I will love doing any anime character, any Batman video game characters. Like, I get really into those kind of things, and I just want to do my versions of them as well.
Yeah.
I'm just really interested in character. My favorite movies are all based on what a character is like. You know, I'm just one of those people that are really into like people's motives and stuff like that. So I think that's why I don't want to tattoo a bottle with a skull in it. I want to tattoo like a character, even if it's like a cowboy alligator. Just I'll come up with something to it, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think that to Patrick's point too, I think people like resonate with storytelling, with characters, with whatever. Like people want to, they can find aspects of their own life that probably tell, where they can tie themselves to a story. To most type, there are a lot of common kind of themes, that have made their way through tattooing and through illustration and design and stuff for a long time. And so I think that is one of the great ways to one thing, kind of develop a style, to get to do the kind of work that you love to do, and to develop a consistent and reliable clientele is to come up with stories that people can identify with, and they identify with the way that you tell them or the way that you illustrate them, and then I think that's how you really build longer term kinds of relationships. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but and I haven't seen this in a while, but Teresa Sharp, she would put out like 10 concepts of things she wanted to tattoo for the upcoming year or whatever. And she wouldn't even necessarily have illustrations. She would just have ideas. Like, I want to do this character doing this, to represent this. And she would just have themes that she wanted. And then those things would sell it instantly because she's selling this idea. She hasn't even drawn it yet, but people know that she can draw. They love the way that she works. And then it's just like, and those stories and ideas resonate with a certain person. They're like, oh yeah, I want that one. That reminds me of a thing that I know.
I think that is like smart, especially at her level. Yeah. I mean, again, like you just said, she's not really in a point where she has to be proving herself, I think, anymore. Maybe I only feel like that because I think maybe we all feel like we still have something to prove. But because I definitely don't feel like I'm at that point where I could just be like, But at the same time, it's weird to talk about the reasons that you're doing, because I think in my mind I was always like, what should come through in the artwork? And if I just keep repeating these things enough, people start to get it. But Patrick was like, no, dude, like, put it out there. He's like, I don't think that you may be expecting a little too much of people if you think people are going to like, there's too many people to be paying attention to for them to figure out like exactly what you're doing, And I was like, okay. So now I've been trying to be a little bit more open with like what I think about my characters and why I'm drawing them and stuff like that. But it's not a bad idea to just put out the stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll definitely think about that.
Right. Yeah, and to your point, I think a lot of us, with Teresa, it's a little different. A lot of us may have to take the time to actually tell the story visually, and say like, hey, this, and maybe even paint the picture of where it would work on a body, show people like, oh, this would be great here, it'd be great here, it'd be great here. It could be arranged to fit this. Maybe we have to go a little further with it, but I do think that like telling the stories, getting them out there is important, and I think that does help build, a kind of a relationship with with the type of people that with your type of client.
That's what Patrick was so big on that. He's such a fucking if anybody's not familiar with Patrick shit, please go look him up, because he is
Yeah.
such a unique little, like, I like that Jewel is part of his Instagram name because he
Yeah.
is just like a little diamond in the rough of just like understanding, and not just like understanding a lot of things, but understanding enough things that he can tell you the advice that you need to hear. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like he's met enough people, I guess, in his life to be like, you're one of these. This is what I need to like try to impart upon you. You know,
Yeah.
because it was so helpful having him here. It
Yeah,
was
yeah, I
crazy.
bet. I bet. Yeah, I spent a few days. I've had him on the show a few times, and he's come and done a technique talk. Which, by the way, while I'm talking about that, I'd love to have you come and do a technique talk for our club. It's similar to this, except for it's maybe 15 or 20 tattooers in the discussion instead of just the two of us.
Sure.
But I'd love to have you do that. But he's done a couple, and they've been really great. He's so thoughtful, and he wants to make sure that everyone's getting the most kind of bang for their buck when they're lending their attention to him. He really wants to be useful and
Yeah.
valuable. And yeah, really, I'm real fortunate to have met him. And yeah, I'm glad that he put us in
Same.
touch. It's been a fun show.
Yeah. Same.
What's the best way? I mean, I guess you're taking appointments still. What's the best
Yeah.
way to reach out to you?
I do not mind Instagram messages at all. So my Instagram is Levi Hilton Tattoos. My email is levihiltonart@gmail.com. Either one of those are acceptable. My website is levihiltonart.com. I got a bunch of new T-shirts and stuff up on the website.
Nice.
Yeah, so yeah, any way of contacting, I try to be as like easygoing and as accommodating as possible. It may take me some time to get back to you, but I try not to limit the things. So
Cool. That's
yeah,
good. And you
anything.
kept the same name all the way through. I was terrible about that for so long. Like my Instagram doesn't have my name in it at all, and we were Fireside Tattoo Network and then Tattoo Improvement Network, and like I had like different handles for everything for years, and it's made it impossible for anyone to find me. So good job not
It's
doing that.
funny. No, I did. Mine used to be Goddamn Levi, and
Right. Right.
I changed it because it seemed like maybe not the best thing.
Right.
But I regret it every day, dude. Like I just
You wish
wish,
you had left it.
yes, dude. I wish because it's so. I think the more you get to know me, the more appropriate it is. Because people are either like, it's just one of those. It's so versatile. It's just like, God damn it, Levi, or God damn Levi, or
Right.
God damn Levi. Like it's said all the time. I bring that
Yeah.
out.
That's
So
good.
yeah, I miss it.
Well, man, I guess you could always go back eventually. So, well, cool, man.
One day,
Thanks for
one day.
taking. See what I tell you? That was a good one, right? Thank you to Levi for taking the time. Be sure to catch him on a Technique Talk coming up in the Inside Fireside Tattoo Club. Thank you guys, as always, for supporting what we do. Go to firesidetattoo.com. Actually, we have a new website that's much easier to navigate and kind of more clear what we offer and what we do for tattooers. So maybe you could check that out and bump our Google ranking a little bit. Well, take her easy. Thank you. Always good to see you, and we'll catch you next time.